They are going to claw it back before you get any payments of any description.
We'll talk about that.
It's dark down here. It's quite... Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Ian J. Cole and this is a series of videos about how to start a record label, a UK record label. If this is the first time you've been at the channel, check the links out below. There's a whole series of videos that precede this particular one. This particular one is one of a two-part video about publishing. The reason it's two-part is otherwise it would be about 40 minutes and we like to sort of keep them to about 15 minutes max, that sort of thing. Just before we get into the main part of this video, I've had a couple of emails from people that have watched previous videos and I was just going to read them out and respond to their comments. The reason I'm doing it this way is that although my email address is freely on there, I tend to try and keep it available for clients only. And I would much prefer people that like the YouTube videos and comment and ask questions, that they do it through YouTube, then everybody can see the response. Anyway, first one, we've got Ranja, who said, "Hi, my name is Ranja, I'm from Wolverhampton near Birmingham. I've been looking to set up a music label where I can release music on behalf of friends and people I know, because if we try and release it from big labels, they ask lots of money. I looked at your videos on YouTube, which cleared up a lot of my doubts, but I am still confused on some of the sections. Is there any way I could contact you so I could gain more knowledge, as you have been running Sinners Music for the last 10 years, so I could avoid wasting my time?" As I've said, Ranja, the best way to do it is to post specific comments under the videos where you've got the question, and I'm happy to respond that way. I'm giving you the tips in the videos that I know are the things that have happened to me over the last 10 years of running the label. So there isn't really anything, unless it's something very specific, which I'm happy to respond to. I can't respond to sort of generic things. Is that okay? Great. The other one is from Liam. And Liam says, "Hi Ian, I want to set up a record label now, as I now have 2 bands ready to press some vinyl for. I've been watching your videos online. Can you give me some more tips?" It's the same answer, Liam, really. I have to say, I don't get involved in vinyl production. What we've done with Sinners Music is, if an artist wants to produce vinyl, as you will have seen in some of the other videos, I consider vinyl to be quite a niche product and quite expensive. So in the video where I talk about types of media like CDs and vinyl and that type of thing, I do actually mention some prices of how much it costs. So it can cost thousands of pounds. Now you need to make sure that the artist has got a following that will at least recoup the expense. So if it costs you £1,000 for, say, a couple of 100 albums, then you need to be able to make sure that you're going to be able to cover at least the costs of the £1,000 that you've spent, and hopefully after that you'd be in profit. And that's partly the reason we don't get involved in that side. They're much more likely to sell albums at gigs, physical media at gigs now. So you would sell vinyl, but I would also have some CDs at gigs, if I'm honest. If you're going to sell media at gigs, it's much harder to try and sell it online, although there are companies like Boomcat and people like that who will sell it on your behalf, but it's not something I would really get into. Again, Liam, it's really good if you post comments in the direct videos underneath the ones where you've got a question, and I'm happy to respond. So but thank you very much for your emails to both of you, and thanks for everybody who is watching the videos and is contributing with questions and things like that. You know, it's not up to me to always have the right answers, because I'm not. I'm just a small guy who's running a small label. But you know, there's a whole load of you out there who will clearly be knowledgeable about specific issues that I don't get involved in. I hope that's okay. Okay, now on to the video about publishing. So what is publishing? Publishing basically, I mean, from our point of view, we are talking about music publishing and music publishers. And I'm going to get on to what actual music publishers are and what types there are, because there actually are 3 types of publisher. What happens is that in return for a percentage, an agent or a publisher would help you as a songwriter get your songs licensed, promoted, to other recording artists, or to get them embedded in a film or an advert or a TV show, that sort of thing. So they will pitch those your particular pieces of music or compositions and songs to other agents. Okay, they then, for that work, will take a percentage of the royalties. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but once they've collected your royalties, then that you can they will distribute that to you as the songwriter or the composer. So what are the types of publisher? So there are 3, as I've said, there's 3 basic types of publisher. The first type is what's called an administrator, and they are usually an individual or a small company. And we did look at being an administrator for some of the clients who we've got on the record label. And what they do is they provide a service of trying to collect your royalties for a small commission. They may try and place your songs with licensees. We were not going to do that. We were just interested in collecting the royalties for clients. We are still collecting royalties on the behalf of one of our clients, although we decided, as you'll see in previous videos, we decided not to become a publisher with PRS and PPL. So the administrator does not normally pay what's called an advance. Now, an advance is a chunk of money that certain publishers will give you, because once you have a song published, it may take anything up to a year or 18 months for the royalties to come in. So some of the larger publishers will give you an advance to help you make demos or to some living expenses or whatever you want to do with it. The thing to think about there with this is that it's a loan, basically. They are lending you money against future royalties that come in. So the way that would work, if you've had £100,000 publishing advance, you're not going to see any money from your songwriting or compositions until that amount of money is paid back. So then that can take quite a while. And what you've got to remember is that if you've done, say, a 50-50 deal, so 50% of the royalties is staying with the publishing house, and you as a songwriter get 50%, and that's not the only deal, and we'll go into the other deals as we go on, then that £100,000 is going to come out of your 50%. So it can take quite a while. Be aware of that, really. I mean, I've never been in a position where I've had the opportunity to sign that type of deal, and I would be very cautious about doing that, because, you know, if I need a loan, if I need the money, fair enough. But if I don't need the money, then I wouldn't be looking to take an advance in that sense. Larger record companies do exactly the same sort of thing. You've got to remember that whenever this sort of thing happens, that it is a loan, and they are going to claw it back before you get any payments of any description. The second type of publisher is what is called an independent publisher. So they would normally be, they would have a global reach, so they would be able to work across all of the territories. And they offer the same sort of service as an administrator, but they also may provide some creative services. So they may have, like us, they may have a recording studio and offer other competitive advances to the composer and songwriter. So you may be, if you signed if we were an independent publisher, we would probably give the composer or songwriter free access to our recording studios as part of the deal, that sort of thing. And the client list of an independent would usually be what would be classed as mid-level artists, plus some sort of talented songwriters and producers along the way there. So people that have had probably a few hits, but they're not the Beyoncés or the Jay-Z's or the Taylor Swifts of this world, really. And then the last type is what's called a major publisher. Now, clearly, a major publisher is the people who align themselves with people like Taylor Swift and Beyonce and these sort of large artists. Okay, and they're the companies like Universal, Warner Chappell, Sony, BMG, EMI. They pay millions of dollars in advances to the songwriter and artists, and that's really in order to maintain a market share. So if Taylor Swift, and Taylor Swift has recently had issues with her previous record company and the publishing there, because she now wants to re-record a lot of her other stuff because of the way that her previous record company, who is obviously clearly a publisher as well, is now releasing music, and she has no say over how those releases are made, which can happen once you leave a record company, a major record company. They can, the contract that you sign probably means that they can do what they like with it. So they can repackage it and put it out at Christmas and all this sort of stuff, which would probably clash with the new stuff that you're putting out. So she's had those sort of issues of late, but certainly a major publisher would vie for that artist. So when Taylor Swift was looking for a new record deal and probably a new publishing deal, there was probably a frenzy to offer her, more and more millions of dollars in an advance. What you've got to remember is it is basically still a loan against future revenue that you're going to bring in. So that's the three main types of publisher. Let's just have a brief look before we actually get on to actually have a look at some of these companies. I'm going to do a screen grab of my computer screen so that you can actually see these companies. Let's have a look at some of the terminology that's involved. So we've got the advance, which we talked about. Sometimes it's called recouping. That's the financial arrangement that you agree to. We have what's called a co-publishing deal, and a co-publishing deal is a certain type of publishing deal where the publisher and songwriter are each 50% owners of the copyright. Now, my advice, and I've said it in previous videos, is don't give away your copyright unless it's a very lucrative deal. So a 50% co-publishing deal really ought to be with a large amount of money, and that's not an advance, that's a large amount of money to pay for that 50% share of the publishing. Ironically, Buddy Holly, if you look at any Buddy Holly record, and an old vinyl 45, there is the name Buddy Holly and Norman Petty. Now, Norman Petty was the guy that recorded Buddy Holly, and he took 50% of his royalties. I think it was 50%. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty much... Anyway, he took a percentage of the royalties forever. So, and he didn't write the songs, but that was the deal. To get the record out there and to use the recording facilities, he basically, Buddy Holly signed a publishing deal with him, and he got his name on the record. Now, he never wrote it, but that was a co-production deal that Norman Petty and Buddy Holly signed back in the day. Right, an administration deal. An administration deal is without a share of copyright. So basically, the publisher agrees to service the writer by collecting a percentage, and it usually can be between 5 and 25%. But these deals vary deal to deal. Most of the deals that we're going to look at are a 20-80 split. So 80% goes to the artist and 20% goes to the publisher. But it can be anything from 5% up to, usually in this case, 25%. But there are those deals, like we said, with a co-publishing deal where it's 50%. There is something called an MDC, which is the minimum delivery commitment. And this is the amount of material of songs that the songwriter required to deliver for a commercial release. Now it might be that it might be for 3 albums, and each of those albums needs to have 10 songs on it as a minimum. So you have to watch out for that, because you do sometimes hear stories of where a publishing deal's gone sour, but contractually the artist still has to produce another 10 or 12 or 15 songs to fulfill the contract. So you need to be aware of things like that. There's one last thing, which is called a sync license. Now, syncing is where the publisher will place the song or the piece of music or the composition, and you might license it to a film company or a TV company, or it might be for an advert or a game. So those licenses can be quite lucrative, and obviously the publisher would probably take their percentage, which might be 20%, and you'd get the rest of it. But so you don't have to. You've done your hard work. You've written the song, but it's the publisher's job really to get off their bottom and push that song or that piece of music, providing that you want to do that. You know, you might be that you don't want that particular song to be on a TV advert, you know. So Steve Harley from Cotton Rebel has had his song Come Up and See Me Make Me Smile synced a couple of times, both on adverts. One was in 2006, it was on an M&S advert, and last summer 2018 it was used in a Viagra advert. Now, when I went to see Steve Harley last time in concert, he was crowing over the fact that the amount of money that was being made by this Viagra advert, and he kept going ka-ching. I have to say, it wasn't particularly appealing to see Steve stood there on stage, you know, telling us how much money was being made from a Viagra advert. It wasn't a good look, Steve, if you ever see this. But sync licenses can, especially if it's a famous song like that, can be very lucrative, really. Anyway, let's get on with having a look at some of the, and I've randomly picked some publishing companies' websites so that we can have a look at them and see what you think of some of these companies. Right, so let's start with the large publishing companies, which is companies like Universal Music and Sony and people like this. It's highly unlikely that sending them demos will get you anywhere. It would usually be that a band or an artist to start to take off, so they'll hear about them, usually through social media, and they are the new hot thing, and then they'd want to have a listen and possibly offer a publishing deal. Now, these type of publishing deals, there will be some money up front. I've never been in a situation where I've been in a room with any of the large publishing houses, so you know, I'm not a lot of experience in this. If you have, stick a comment down below, and it'd be good to share those experiences. But what I am going to do is we're going to look at some of the other smaller publishing companies and whether they're worth anything, really. I first signed a publishing deal in about 2011, and it was with a company called Muse IQ in New York. We signed a 50-50 publishing deal with, and we signed a 50-50 publishing deal so that I would keep all of the copyright, and that's quite crucial. So you should never give away your copyright. And what was the situation with Muse IQ is they were meant to be try and place in the songs that they'd agreed. There was probably about 6 songs, I think, in the original agreement, and they were meant to be trying to place them in film and TV or on wherever, really. They didn't do any of that sort of stuff. They seemed like nice guys, but nothing ever came of it, that publishing deal. So there was no upfront money. They were meant to be placing it, and it just didn't happen. Now, this will probably, a lot of these smaller companies, that may be the experience that you may have. And Muse IQ have now gone. The reason I can't show you their website is because it doesn't exist anymore. So the other thing, I mean, just as an aside, Universal Music Publishing Group are the bad boys of publishing to some extent, because they were the company that a lot of their artists are actually suing them because they stored all of the masters, and there was a fire which wasn't their fault, but they then tried to cover up the fact that that all of the masters were actually destroyed. And there's an awful lot of original masters which have gone forever, which is quite sad, really. Moving on, let's have a look at Centric Music. Now, I have an account with Centric Music, and they are publishing for one of my albums. This was an experiment. It doesn't cost you anything to join Centric. So basically, anybody can join Centric. You agree to do their publishing deal, and what they agree to is they agree to try and place your music for TV and film and that sort of stuff. Now, my agreement with Centric, and it's a rolling agreement, so you can stop any time. I can't remember what the percentage rates are, but let's have a look what we do. So they will collect royalties on your behalf from performing rights societies if you're no longer a member, if you aren't a member. So what they do is various dealers in the industry, 80-20 royalty split. So artist gets 80%, they take 20%. They may say it's the fairest deal, but it's pretty much standard that an awful lot of the companies, the smaller publishing houses, will do an 80-20 split. The 50-50 split is usually when a publishing house has got a place for a piece of music and they want to place it, and then they'll be the middleman. I have had experience of this. I was 2010. 2 of the songs from my band Kate and the Questions were asked to be put into a small independent film based out of Scotland. I think the film company were based in Glasgow, and we were offered a publishing contract. Now, the publishing contract at that point was a 50-50 split, which was fine. Now, had the 50-50 split not wanted to keep the copyright, so I would have had to give up the copyright for these 2 songs to be in the film. If it hadn't been the case, I would have signed the deal and would have taken the money. There was no advance. It was just you got 50% of whatever money was generated by the publishing house. Now, what was wrong here was the fact that they wanted copyright. They wanted just to take the copyright. There was no advance. That would have meant that if I wanted to put those 2 songs on an album, I would have had to pay the publishing house to be able to do that. and that was just wrong. So I say it again, never give up your copyright. The only time that you should consider giving up your copyright, if they're a large publishing company and they want what's called a buyout. Now, a buyout is usually the sort of thing that happens with a big major Hollywood type film, where they don't want to be paying you PRS and royalties, on an ad hoc basis. They want a complete buyout. Now, and that should be a lot of money, really, £50,000, dollars, whatever. If it's a big company, I would certainly consider getting a lawyer involved, especially an expert who deals with this type of contract, because it could all go horribly wrong if you sign for, say, 10 grand and suddenly it's a massive blockbuster movie and you are losing millions of pounds or dollars. Anyway, back to Centric. So I've had nothing from Centric. My album has been with Centric for about 3 years, I think, and there's been no royalty payments. There's been no placement of the tracks, and it's an experimental electronic music album, so it's not got a big audience, but it's the sort of thing that would probably get placed in some TV or that type of thing. So I'm not overly impressed by Centric. There is no vetting process, so anybody who has written a song can join Centric, and like I say, it's a 30-day or a monthly contract which you can get out of any time. Good thing about it is you do keep your own copyright. So the fact that the music that I've published with Centric, and it does appear on my PRS statements that they are the publisher. The good thing about Centric is the fact that you get to keep the copyright. Have a look at it if you think it's worthwhile. My experience is it's not worthwhile, but if you've had any experience of them, pop it in the comments down below and let's start a dialogue about it. And I randomly did most of the other companies in fact all the other companies I have no experience of. I just did a random publishing company search and then did a little bit of research on these companies. Now, Outpost, you'll see quite a few companies like Outpost. They are a PR company, and I think they're a PR company first and foremost. They also do distribution, they have a music label, and as part of that they do publishing. I'm not convinced that this type of business is necessarily the right thing to do for just publishing. The good thing about this, it seems that they're UK centric, so they're based in East London. We don't know if they're actually financed outside of the UK or whether they just are a UK company. The first thing I would suggest with any of these companies is have a look at their artists. Are there artists, anybody that you've heard of? Let's just have a quick look at the label if we can. So Nightmares on Wax, Yizzy, Holly Cook. So they're not artists that I've particularly heard of, but that's not to say that they aren't, But their clients are interesting. We've got Warp, Fiat, Red Stripe, Universal. Now, I'm assuming that these, the client section is for their PR bit of the company. So it's not about the company. And we've got Universal in there. So they've done PR for some quite large companies. Okay. Now, whether you would want to do your publishing through them, I would be looking to do a little bit more research. The other thing is, how is that split? Can you just do publishing with them? Let's just see if there's anything else. What's it say about publishing? So, did you know that just one play on BBC Radio 1 and one gig, a medium-sized venue, will get you the same amount of income as 15,000 streams on Spotify? Yes, we did. A lot of these companies will say this. Our music publishing division takes the complicated publishing stuff, and it is a complicated subject, is publishing. And allows you to focus on what you do best, which is making music. I do think that if you're going to get into bed with the publisher, it's about trust as much as anything. So They will all say about the broadcast royalties and the synchronization. Synchronization is where they place the music or they sync it for TV adverts or TV or film or that type of thing. And they will also do things and sort your mechanical royalties out. So they'll do everything for you from a publishing point of view, or they say they will. Again, if anybody's had experience of Outpost, they're new to me. So I know absolutely nothing about them from what I've seen on this website. So thanks very much for watching. I hope that's the first part of this two-parter on publishing. We'll look at some more publishing houses in the second part of the video, and I hope you found that useful, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks very much. Bye bye.